Hey there, folks. Welcome on into WRAL Triangle and Two. I'm Fernandez. He's Mark Bergin. Today, we've got plenty for you. We're each going to argue which quarterback the Panthers should take with that number one pick. We're going to pick a guy and tell you why he's the best. We're going to talk a little bit of Canes, a little hockey on Triangle and Two with the series against the Islanders and the Stanley Cup Playoffs starting on Monday, the day we are recording this. And then we're going to talk a little bit of transfer portal as we're getting closer and closer to the end of that portal, the portal closing, if you will. Got a little bit of time left. So looking at what the three major Triangle teams need to do. Let's get started with the Panthers, though, Mark Bergin. We are what? I think you said 10 days from the NFL draft. Is that right?
10 days away from when we figure out who the future of the Panthers is, the face of the franchise, which quarterback they're going to select, Lewis. And you're going to argue for Bryce Young today. And I'm going to say, you're wrong, Luis Fernandez. We're each going to argue on behalf of which quarterback the Panthers should take when they have the first selection, April 27th, Kansas City, Missouri, 2023 NFL draft. Here we go.
Yeah, it's here. But before we get started on this, because I was just thinking about this, quick aside, don't you think that the first pick in the draft, like whenever someone gets it, I know they have 10 minutes. They shouldn't have 10 minutes, right? Like, I think it should be like the draft starts and you have to turn in your work immediately because you've been on the clock for the Panthers now since what? February, whenever
I hear your complaint, Lewis, but remember the 1 year where like the Vikings didn't submit their pick on time? Could you imagine if that happened with the first overall pick and there was confusion there? Not that there should be, but wait until the very last minute. Maybe you get a King's ransom trade. I can't imagine the Panthers would trade this pick in any scenario, but wait until the very last moment just to make sure you've turned over all rocks.
So that's okay. That's where I'm going to get started with this because I do think that some people have thrown out the notion that like the Panthers may are trying to like put smoke screen out there or trying to kind of like, who are we going to pick? Who are we going to pick?
Smoke screen season, baby.
Well, but here's the thing. Why do they need to smoke screen? They have the number one pick. It doesn't matter. No one gets the pick in front of them. But I digress. I think that as we have seen the odds shift here over the past couple of weeks, we talked about it last week, especially, the Bryce Young has moved to the favorite for the number one pick in the NFL draft.
Can I interject really quickly here?
Sure.
Anyone listening or watching this, we were recording this at noon Monday on April the 17th. So like last week, I understand there were viewers watching. We can't always just put things out in real time immediately. Appreciate your patience and understanding. Having said that, and last week someone was like, oh, these guys have a Panthers show, yet they don't know who the odds-on favorite is. The odds can change in an instant in this industry. I want to put that caveat out there for anyone listening or watching, Lewis. Please continue.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to pull this up right now. As of 12:32, that is what time it is right now, according to DraftKings. This is at 12:33, excuse me. Bryce Young is sitting at minus 450 for the number one pick in the draft for the DraftKings board. The very next player is CJ Stroud at plus 320. The lines can change, of course, but the fact that we're in this position at all when CJ Stroud seemed like the odds-on favorite for so long, I think is a little bit wild. So, Bryce Young, I do not think this is a smokescreen. I think the Panthers are genuinely going to draft Bryce Young, and I will go ahead and make my case. I ask, I will put my evidence out there. I wish I knew more like law and courtroom verbiage to say, but it's been a while since I watched Law and Order. And Mark, please feel free to interject if there's something I say here that you think is bad and you want to really point out. So when we look at Bryce Young as a whole, right, Heisman winner, so had a lot of success, especially in his first season starting 2021 as a true sophomore at what he was 19, 20 years old, I believe at the time. Over his 2 seasons, 65% completion percentage. He threw 8,200 yards, 79 touchdowns, only 12 interceptions. So boom, there you go. That's just the very raw basics of it. Of course, the stats don't tell the entire picture. When you go back and you watch the film, he is someone who is very dynamic. He is a playmaker, something that you can't teach, which I think is going to be my main argument here for why Bryce Young needs to be picked number one overall. The traits that Bryce Young shows cannot be taught. It cannot be taught. His playmaking ability, his ability to read defenses and get rid of the ball. His ability to move in the pocket, step up into the pocket, constantly be looking downfield. He has great ball placement. It goes where in the best place for his wide receivers to make a move on the ball. One thing that was thrown out there recently is the S2 scores. Now, this is something that the NFL is starting almost like if for those who are listening or watching, if you remember the Wonderlic, right? How a bit of a flawed test. Intelligence, I guess, is kind of what it taught.
But hang on, Lewis. That mattered though for the quarterback position, because go back and look at the quarterbacks that won a Super Bowl, the quarterbacks that are Super Bowl winners in the modern era. In the 50-question Wonderlic test, you had to get a 25 or above. I'm not saying there's a causation, but I'm all for correlations in trying to determine how quarterbacks succeed in this league. Go ahead.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing with the S2 score, which is something that people are leaning on a lot more in the NFL circles. It highlights and focuses on scoring and grading how quickly you're able to process information, which is the most important element of playing quarterback. I will argue. Throwing the ball. Oh, duh. Okay, throwing the ball. Yeah. But besides that, it's how quickly you can process information and how quickly you can get rid of the ball. I think you have two types of quarterbacks out there. You have the ridiculous playmakers like the Patrick Mahomes, the Josh Allens, who are a one-man wrecking crew, a kaiju, if you will, the Godzillas, the Mothras of the world. But you also then you have the point guard like quarterbacks, the ones that get the ball out quickly, get it moving, and that's where Bryce Young, I think, falls into effect. When you look at his S2 score, according to what has been said, Daniel Jeremiah, I think, was the one who put it out there a few weeks back. He scored in the high 90s out of 1 to 100. And when you look at the quarterbacks that score in like the mid 90s, they are Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, like these high caliber quarterbacks who right now we would say are top 5 in the NFL. They are the ones that are scoring in the mid-90s with this S2 score. And the fact that Bryce Young is comparable, if not better, I think that goes a very long way. I think it's one thing too, and I'll kind of wrap a bow on this for now, and then we can move on to your side and come back here. With Bryce Young, really, I almost cheated in the sense, I feel like. We've talked about it before with CJ Stroud, actually, but Josh Norris and Josh McCown had a show of Underdog Football called Scheme. And they had a 25-minute video breaking down Bryce Young from Josh McCown's perspective. Remember, Josh McCown is the quarterback's coach of the Carolina Panthers. And he just praised the playmaking ability, the fact that Bryce Young could do things that you could not teach. I think that raises the ceiling of a quarterback prospect. And if you're going to trade up and go get the number 1 pick, do you want to go with someone who is safe? Or do you want to go with someone? Do you want to swing for the fences? And I think swinging for the fences in this case is getting Bryce Young.
I think that the word you're looking for, Lewis, is the poise. The
poise, yes.
Yes. That's what I've heard with Bryce Young. And it's funny, too, because he didn't have the playmakers in 2022 that he had during his 2021 season when he won the Heisman. But I still think Alabama had a pretty good offensive line. Like they've got 4 and 5 starters.
No, they didn't. No, they didn't. No,
their
offensive
recruits.
Their offensive
the caliber
line
of recruits that other schools get. I understand that. Oh, it wasn't great this past season. Come on, Alabama compared to other schools in the SEC, let alone the other Power 5. I don't buy it, Lewis.
We're not comparing to other schools. We're comparing specifically to the quarterbacks that could go with that number 1 overall pick. And so their offensive line, because you brought it up, sacks I do not think are the greatest measurement of an offensive line's ability. Sometimes sacks are on the quarterback, but they were not bottom 50. Excuse me. They were just outside the top 50 in sack rate in both seasons with Bryce Young as the starting quarterback. He got mauled a few times. The Auburn game, his Heisman season, they gave up 7 sacks. And that was when he had his Heisman moment and led them down the field to score a touchdown. Like it was like 90 some odd yard drive to get to Alabama to overtime in the Iron Bowl. So compare that to CJ Stroud, who has 2 starting tackles who might go in the first round. Just saying.
And look, the Panthers are saying we got Ike Ekwonu and 4 other bodyguards in front of Bryce Young to keep him upright if he is indeed the pick, because he is now a heavy favorite to be the Panthers' first overall pick at minus 450, Lewis. For any listeners, viewers, doesn't know what that means. You got to put 450 buckaroos down to win 100 back for a $550 net payout. So he is a heavy, heavy favorite to go number one now. Obviously, that can change between now and April 27th. But what happens where, okay, we talk about Russell Wilson and we talk about Drew Brees. I could name you, say, the Johnny Manziels of the world, where the success of undersized quarterbacks with Drew Brees and Russell Wilson is the exception and not the norm. And so if you're the Panthers, you're saying, let's keep him upright. Frank Wright, in 17 years, hasn't coached a quarterback who's 6'2", who's shorter than 6'2". There aren't that many quarterbacks that are below 200 pounds, and he's at 204 listed at the combine. I don't know if I really believe that, Lewis. I don't know if I believe that for a second.
He's not going to play at 204.
So what is the trajectory? What does previous history show you with previous prospects of to keep quarterback not just healthy, but to have success in this league? And that's why I think CJ Stroud is the more sure thing. Yeah, you play with talented players. You mentioned Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is playing with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase lighting up the scoreboard. They had one of the best seasons in all of 2019 to say, oh, well, in college, he's playing with more talented players, especially compared to the other competition. I don't buy that argument for a second.
CJ Stroud's not Joe Burrow, though, to be fair. But okay, no, continue, please. Tell me why CJ Stroud. There are
it's the
things
size and speed, and it's the puck, and it's the arm strength. It's your prototypical passer of, okay, you mentioned Joe Burrow and Mahomes. What are they, 6'4", 6'5" in this league? We've seen that have success in the league. Show me other quarterbacks. Okay, Russell Wilson's thick, so let's throw that out immediately. Different build. Yes, he's shorter, but is a lot thicker than Bryce Young is going to be. Drew Brees, it was the accuracy. It was the placement. He had the offensive genius of Sean Payton. And those are two examples. And Lewis, we were talking before the show. You've got some data of there aren't that many young, undersized quarterbacks that have achieved success at the highest level in the NFL. You can't deny that.
Ben Solak, with the Ringer, I think I'm saying his last name correctly. He did a great article right before the combine, kind of breaking down the size and argument behind Bryce Young. So since 1970, 172 quarterbacks have started at least 50 games in the NFL. Only 11 was 6 foot or shorter. Quarterbacks drafted since 1970, just 30 of 522 quarterbacks selected have been 6 foot or shorter. First 3 rounds, there were 241 quarterbacks selected since 1970. Only 7 were 6 foot or shorter. 127 quarterbacks since 1970 have been selected in the first round. Only 3 were 6 foot or shorter. And they were Michael Vick, Kyler Murray, and Johnny Manziel. And then when you look on the weight side of things, since 1970, only 8 quarterbacks have been drafted at 200 pounds or under. Pat White was the only one to go before the 6th round. And so while Bryce Young may technically weigh, according to the NFL Combine, 204 pounds, 205 pounds, that is not going to be his playing weight. Unless he bulks up a little bit, which he still could. He's only 21, turns 22 this July, so he still could. But I understand the size argument of things. But I think when part of it is when you have to look at the actual quarterbacks that were that size and were drafted. So you have 2 kind of camps, right? You have the running quarterback, someone like a Michael Vick or Kyler Murray, who has just incredible athleticism. Watching Kyler Murray, Michael Vick is Michael Vick. Watching Kyler Murray for the first time at Oklahoma, I think it was the Army game was the first game he started. It legitimately looked like he was moving in fast forward. That's just how fast he moves, how his legs move. And then you have Drew Brees, obviously, who also was a lot shorter in height. And he's just, incredibly accurate. But I don't think that there has been a quarterback of Bryce Young's size that has had the mental part of the game down pat so well.
And here's the thing too, is the
presence,
argument
and all
against Stroud, Lewis. I got to hop in here saying, oh, well, what Ohio State quarterbacks have had success in the league. We were saying the same thing a few years back about Alabama. Here we've got Bryce Young, who's going to be one of the top picks in this draft. We have Tua. We have Jalen Hurts, who just got paid today, almost $180 million guaranteed. The Panthers can't afford to miss on this pick.
I think, per year is what it's going to be. Crazy.
They cannot afford to miss on this pick because in the NFC, there's a huge talent void right now at the quarterback position. And if you think that the Panthers gave up a premium to get the first overall pick, it's only going to be more expensive as we move more and more into the future when the salary cap increases more and more and more and more. Because right now in the NFC, there's Jalen Hurts and there's everyone else. You could say, well, what about Aaron Rodgers or what about Stafford or Jared Goff? I'm not talking about previous success. I'm talking about the 2023 season and beyond. Mm-hmm. Those are the stakes right now for the Panthers. And if they strike gold, they're going to be sitting pretty because there's a dearth of quarterback talent in the NFC compared to what is a gauntlet in the AFC.
Well, so, okay, and I think all that is fair. And for the record, I do think that both of these quarterbacks will have success. I do think that if you pick Stroud or you pick Young, I think you're going to be okay. You're going to be good. But my thing is, the reason why CJ Stroud should be pick number one should not be because I am concerned about Bryce Young's size. It should be because CJ Stroud needs to be the number one pick. That is one of my big takeaways.
All right. But here's the thing too, is can you keep Young healthy for what? Okay. And that's where I look at the Solak numbers, Lewis, because I look at, it's a big sample size. And I understand each player is their own individual. I totally understand that. But what is the recipe to have the greatest chance of success? And I think that's CJ Stroud for all of the reasons we've discussed, Lewis.
Well, there you go. So a little bit of a debate here on Triangle and Two then. So, let us know what you think, who you think they should go with. As the days pass, the more and more I have come to just kind of like I'm a lot more comfortable with the notion of the Bryce Young pick at number one. I was definitely all CJ Stroud early on, but I feel like I get the Bryce Young pick, and the more and more time that passes, the more and more I like the Bryce Young pick. I
still think, and you can call me crazy, that Anthony Richardson should be considered. You might think that I'm nuts, but cancel your CJ Stroud orders. Bryce Young looks like it's going to be. And here's the thing too, Lewis, we might be talking a week from now and the odds might have flipped again. We really don't know until it's announced on April the 27th, unless it leaks. But I will say this, I don't expect it to flip again because you look at the odds, it is not what definitively will happen, but it is a good indicator of what is likely to happen.
10 days. It needs to hurry up because we're in the worst part of the NFL draft prep right now, which is when everyone is just kind of losing their minds. That's where we're at right now. But I digress.
You want to go to the ice?
Yeah, let's go and go to the ice. The Hurricanes are starting another Stanley Cup playoff run, or at least hoping to start another Stanley Cup playoff run. Monday, when we are recording today, they host the New York Islanders. The Canes were 3-1 against the Islanders this season in the regular season. They had about a plus 20 point differential overall compared to the Islanders. And they have met in the playoffs before. If you go back to 2019, the Hurricanes swept the Islanders to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. They've won 3 straight division titles since then. The Islanders, I believe, got to the Eastern Conference Finals the year after and then missed the playoffs last year, but they are back and they are starting to get healthy. Mark, first thoughts on this Canes series?
I have 3 questions, Lewis, headed into the playoffs that I want to address, and I'll go one at a time. Let's start with question number 1. Canes making their 5th consecutive playoff appearance. The big overarching question, what makes this year different? What makes this year different than previous years? And you're shaking your head, Lewis, but that's question number 1 to say, you've had good success under Rod Brindamore and company, but how can you go beyond just the second round and actually make a push for the Stanley Cup? So that's question number 1. If you want to hop in, I can go.
It's tough because I do think that they were set up to be different this year. But the injuries have just been really tough. The Svechnikov injury I think the biggest of them so far. So Svechnikov hurt his knee. I would think it was there were 19 games left in the regular season. The Canes 9-9-1 in that final 19. Their struggles down the last month or so, I think were pretty apparent. When you look at before Svechnikov's injury, they're averaging 3.3 goals per game, which was 11th in the Hockey League, National Hockey League. And the big one for me is the power play, obviously 21.7% on power play before the injury as well. So the Canes, it's capitalizing on the power play, capitalizing those opportunities. That's what they've needed come playoff time. That, by the way, was 15th in the NHL. Since then, since the injury, so in that final 19 games, 2.72 goals per game, which was 26th in the NHL, and 10.9% on the power play, which was 31st. The only team that was worse in the power play than the Canes, this season was the Islanders. So at least there's that.
Whoa. That's going to be battle of the worst then in this first round.
It's tough.
Power play. For the power play.
Yes, for the power play, but it's tough.
It's tough. That was my question number 2 is how do you fare without Svechnikov? So you're in my brain, Lewis, which is a dangerous place to be. But when you say a team losing its all-star player, do the same exercise with another team. It's not just going to be, let's plug in the next player, next man up. It's going to be a combination and to help share that load. But show me another team that loses its all-star and how do they cope? So you're in my brain with question number 2, and you did a great job explaining the repercussions of how the Canes have fared without Svechnikov. Now, question number 3 is, can a goalie get hot? Because if you want to go on a deep playoff push, if you want to go on a Stanley Cup run, you've got to have a goalie who can get hot. And I'll make the analogy of standing on your head to where your goalie can bail you out and win a game or two, which can swing a series in the playoffs. Can one of the Canes goalies get hot, depending on who they decide to go with?
So when I look at the series against the Islanders, I mean, it's tough because the Canes have definitely limped into the playoffs a little bit here. They took them down to the very last game to win the Metro outright. And fortunately, that was the biggest thing. The Canes' biggest win for the playoffs came before the playoffs even began. The fact that they could play the Islanders instead of having to play the Rangers. And so now you have the Devils and the Rangers battling it out. And then the Canes, should they beat the Islanders in the series, would go on to play the winner of that one. So, I mean, that's the biggest win of the playoffs before you even get started. The Islanders intrigue me so much because of the fact that they're going to be getting Matt Barzal back. He had a lower body injury. It was about mid-February. He's been out since then, and he was second, I think, in the lower body.
That's
injury.
What I'm laughing at. Yeah.
Okay. But he finished second in points for the Rangers, for the Islanders. And that was in playing only 58 games. He had 51 points, 14 goals, and 37 assists. Now he's back. The Islanders did play well without him. They were 14-7-2 without him. But it's what does that do now overall? Because they have the goaltending ability. Ilya Sorokin. I'm going to butcher his name. I am so sorry.
No, it's okay. Sorokin. Listen,
Sorokin.
Help us out and have mercy in the comments is what please. I would say. But I was laughing about the lower body injury, Lewis. I'm sorry. I don't mean to derail your point, but it can be anything from a bruise to a season-ending knee injury. So it can it can vary wildly.
He was supposed to be week to week, and then they ended up sitting him for an extended period of time, and now he's back. But Sorokin has been fantastic. He's had 1,698 shots saved. He's at a 924 save percentage. He played in, I think it was 62 games, started 60, I want to say 31, 22 and 7 record. So it's going to be tough. They're going to have to score, in their standard sets. And that's going to be key. Capitalize. It feels like a broken record when it comes to the Canes, but they're going to have to capitalize on the power play. That's what it's going to have to be if they want to have any success this postseason. Because if you're able to get past the Islanders, then you're going to have to probably face the Rangers or the Devils, who have been very hot, both teams. Rangers more so, but I don't know. And then too, I think part of it is the Islanders traded for what's his name, Bo Horvat, back, or I think it was end of January, and he hasn't been as phenomenal as he was with the Canucks. He had 31 goals in 49 games with the Canucks, and then when they traded him, he's had 30 games since he got traded to the Islanders. He's only scored 7 goals, but he had 3 goals when him and Barzal were playing at the same time in those 7 games. So my question is, like, I feel like I have more questions with the Islanders than I do with the Canes in this series. I feel like I know what I'm going to be getting with the Canes. It's just a matter of what are the Islanders going to bring. Are they going to have a juiced offense now that Barzal is coming back? I don't know. It's going to be intriguing.
I think that's all fair, Lewis, especially considering you got home ice advantage. PNC Arena tonight. Game 2 will be on Wednesday. Canes in tonight's game, as of we're recording right now, a 1.5-goal favorite tonight. So you hope you take care of business in game 1, best of 7 series. And that home ice advantage, I think, is really important as the 2 seed as well. Get the fans going nuts in Raleigh. Lewis, it's just
it's a great place
we're due. It's 5 straight years now. It's like, let's get this done.
It's gonna be interesting. I think the big question is, can you play great defense, and can you just find ways to score? They had the Canes had this is another note here. I took a bunch of notes. The Canes had 59 goals from defensemen this season, which is most in the NHL. And this is part of the reason why you get Brent Burns in the offseason. Someone who's experienced, someone who knows how to ride this out, and can score from his perspective. So to me that's going to be big. Can the Canes finally kind of seize the moment here in the playoffs? The injuries are so tough, but I mean, it's a long season, and a lot of teams are dealing with injuries as well.
Most goals from defensemen: Sebastian Aho, 36 goals, 31 assists, and Martin Necas, I think I'm saying that correctly. Thank you.
Necas.
28 goals, 43 assists as well. So to piggyback off
Martin Necas has been an engine. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. We'll see how it all unfolds. By the time you're listening to this, you'll probably be in the middle of game 1, if not past game 1. So we'll see how it starts.
Let's go from the ice to the hardwood, Lewis, and close this baby out. All
right. So transfers. The transfer season continues for all the teams involved. We're kind of reaching about like the halfway point of the transfer season. It's a marathon, not a sprint when it comes to transfers. We see a lot of people enter the portal. We see a lot of people try and figure out what they're going to want to do. And now we're getting to the point where people have to start making decisions about where they're going to end up, where they're going to play. So let's go over the 3 triangle teams and see what we want for the triangle teams, what we need them to finish with. Because everyone's made some moves. Now it's going to be about, okay, what is there left to do? We'll start with UNC because I think UNC has had the most attention to it regarding the transfer portal, mostly because people were leaving in the transfer portal. But they brought in 2 guys, Paxton Wojcik from Brown, the guard, and Jalen Withers, the forward from Louisville. Okay, so you've got the 2 of them coming in. There still seems to be a pretty glaring hole on the roster. Mark, what is it?
Shooting. I mean, this past season, you needed the outside shooting, and we talked about this on previous episodes. Can those players fill that void? You know what you got in RJ Davis and Armando Bacot, but can you surround them with other players that, when they're open, can hit outside shots? And that was, the name of the game is basketball. It sounds easy, but the floor spacing was a big concern because you didn't have that component that Brady Manick brought to the table when you went on the title run. Can you improve the outside shooting? Now, Lewis, what I was going to ask you is it Withers? Which player are you most excited for to see in a North Carolina uniform that's going to be new to this roster in the 2023-2024 season?
I am excited to see the first wing that gets on the roster, honestly, because I think that's what Carolina needs so much right now. They don't have any wings. Like I think that Paxton Wojcik and Jalen Withers, I think are solid depth pieces to add to the mix. Some people were kind of Louisville, oh wow, Carolina's picking up the guys from Louisville. Oh, Louisville was so bad last year. It's individual players. We saw so many players contribute massively in the NCAA tournament this year. They came from programs that had bad years last year, so I'm not too worried about that. But to me, it's going to be the first wing that can start for Carolina. That's who I'm going to be most excited to see on the roster. Nick Timberlake, I know there was a lot of smoke around him wanting to come to Carolina, doing his official visit and all that stuff. He's been to a lot of places now. I think I saw someone on social media. He's going to be kind of making his decision sometime soon. Getting him the Towson wing would be huge for Carolina, but we'll see. We'll see. There's still a lot of work that Carolina needs to do in the transfer portal, but there's still a lot of time in the transfer portal. It is a marathon, not a sprint, and they're gonna get some guys. They physically need the people. So they're going to find the people. It's just a matter of who it's going to be.
Not just that, but I know criticism of Hubert Davis is, he doesn't go into his bench for depth. And it's like, okay, has he had the roster to be able to do that, to put out a 5 that lives up to the Carolina name and the Carolina legacy? Sure. So that is something where in the coming years, and I don't think that's a question we'll even know after 3 seasons, but say it comes year 4, year 5, is that just the style of how he coaches? Or is that more so based on the players and the personnel that he has on the roster? That's something I'm curious to see, not just for this upcoming season, but this upcoming season and beyond during the Hubert Davis era.
Absolutely.
You want to go to State or Duke next?
Let's do State, because I think
State's pretty easy. We can get State knocked out real quick. Okay. How do you fill the void? Jarkel Joyner out of eligibility. Terquavion Smith is going to go to the NBA. So your guard play. And it's like, look, I love DJ Burns. If he's back in a Wolfpack uniform, how can you get him the ball? How can you feed the Beast Boy? Shout out to his hip hop single that he dropped on the eve of the NCAA tournament, Lewis. But it's the guard play. Really, really simple here, because Joyner, who had a great season, was a great transfer pickup for the Wolfpack. That worked out. And then Smith, I don't fault him at all for going to the NBA. I honestly was a little surprised he came back for a sophomore season. So to me, it's the guard Wolfpack, and it's as easy as that, just given the contributions of both Smith and Joyner.
Yeah, they've added Jaden Taylor from Butler and DJ Horn from Arizona State. Both guys who, combo. Jaden Taylor, I believe, is a combo guard. DJ Horn, a guard. And so both average around 12 points per game. So I think that, that's great. Now, do you want to continue to add that? I think of the 3 teams in the Triangle, State far and away has had the most success with the transfer portal. When you look at someone like DJ Burns, when you look at Jarkel, what Jarkel Joyner did last year, if the pitch writes itself to anyone who, wants to come and play for State, or anyone they're trying to recruit, it's, hey, look what Jarkel Joyner did. If you're a guard, come do that. Come do what he did. Obviously, Jarkel Joyner is very talented and continues to have a lot of success as he makes his way towards the NBA. But that's going to be really interesting to me. Guards, just get someone in there who can facilitate that fast moving offense and put up points. That's their biggest loss right now, is those points. So we'll see how that goes. Now, turning to Duke. Duke's an interesting case, because last year it was Carolina that seemed to be bringing everyone back, and now it's Duke that's bringing everyone back, or almost everyone back. You lose Dariq Whitehead. You lose Derek Lively. There's a lot of talent there. Derek Lively's contribution defensively is obviously very tough, but you're bringing so many other people back. The Proctors, the Mark Mitchells, the Kyle Filipowskis. Like you have a lot of talent that's coming back. What are your thoughts, Mark? What do you want to see from Duke?
Well, remember, Roach as well is going to test the NBA waters. He could be back, though, so he's going to see how he fares with his NBA, how he projects in the NBA. That, to me, is a big key, because if you have veteran guard play, especially come March, that is really, really important. So the big question for me is, okay, is Roach coming back for 2023, 2024 or not? That's number one. But I look at the recruiting class, number 2 in the country: Sean Stewart, Jarrett McCain, Caleb Foster, TJ Power. Welcome to Durham, folks. The number 2 recruiting class in the country. Blue Bloods, they don't rebuild, they reload. So even if Duke does lose Roach, they lose Whitehead, and they lose Derek Lively, I think they're going to be okay. I think it's going to be okay in the John Shire era. And I would say the same thing to Tar Heels fans. Be patient, because not this offseason, next offseason, the Tar Heels have a loaded class of their own. So you got to be patient. You can't win the title every single year, even though you want to. But I think Duke's going to be just fine, especially considering the recruits that they have coming in.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, because I think that it feels like Duke's identity might shift a little bit as well, because you're bringing back some younger players who are going into the sophomore year now and will continue to get comfortable and advance and grow. Proctor really came on towards the second half of last year. Kyle Filipowski obviously was very talented. Getting him back is going to be huge for Duke. To me, it's really just going to be about the defensive side of things. Derek Lively's dominance down low, truly, I don't think can be understated. The way he, completely would take over games from a defensive perspective, even if he wasn't putting up a bunch of points. So the question then becomes, how do you replace that defensive capability? So that's what's going to be interesting. That's the biggest thing I'm watching for Duke then this offseason. But yeah, they don't have a whole lot of holes to fill. They're it's on all the way too early top 25s I'm seeing. They're top 5. So it's probably going to be that way when the AP preseason poll comes out in many, many months. But yeah, we'll keep an eye out as the transfer portal continues to close, as we continue the countdown to the NFL draft, and as the Hurricanes playoff run gets underway.
I do want to give a shout out to Brian Murphy with WRAL Sports. If you're confused on any of these transfers of who's coming, who's leaving, on WRALSportsFan.com, he put together a team by team. It's all in one story of all the transfers, NC State, Duke, and North Carolina. So if you're confused about, I thought this player was staying, I thought this player was going, check that out. It's all in one place. Very, very easy to figure out. And he put it in chronological order too, Lewis. I want to say one other thing before we wrap here. Thought it was very interesting. The North Carolina grad, when we're talking about all 3 triangle hoop teams, starts with North Carolina and we finish with Duke last. I'm just noticing things.
No, listen. It's from most needs to least needs. That's the order. That's the order. Listen, I'm a capital J journalist. Capital J. Shout out to UNC's
Lewis, you're the best, man.
You too, Mark. Thank you all so much for watching. You can catch us anywhere you listen to your podcast. So new episodes come out Monday at 5:00. You can also watch us on the 99.9 YouTube page, and you also on WRALSportsFan.com. Thank you all so much. We will see you next week as we get ready for the NFL draft just in 10 days. Bye, everyone.